Welcome to the Pantheon.Plus Rewind.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to episode 29 of The Rewind, a podcast dedicated to the news and community discussions around the upcoming MMORPG Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. Today, we'll dig into the official Pantheon Twitter, official forums, the ongoings at Pantheon.Plus, and more as we talk about the week that was. As always, don't forget that you'll be able to download this podcast for on-the-go listening, as it's available on iTunes and Spotify for download every week. I'll also give everyone a fair warning that I've had a sore throat, which has led to a copious amount of coughing, so I apologize if I sound a little bit off today. It's been a rough week, to say the least. So anyways, now this show really couldn't happen if I weren't joined by my co-pilot, Theric. So happy Sunday, my dude, and how are things for you?
Things are great, man. I'm sorry to hear you're sick. That totally sucks. But man, it's been a good week. I'm a creature of routine and habit, and I like to go to bed at like the same time every week. I'm very like regimented like that. But this week was not regimented at all. We had a couple late nights, and I'll just say we were up gaming pretty late. I'm not going to go into much more detail than that. I'm going to actually use a Seinfeldism to describe what our week was like. So let's just say Wednesday, Thursday. Yada, yada, yada. We were both really tired the next day.
Yeah, but well worth it.
Absolutely. So, but tired, I'm recovered, I'm ready to go. Let's get this thing done.
All right, sounds good. So let's start the show.
This week in Visionary Realms news and notes.
So now getting back to the normal to do things here in the Rewind. We're going to start with the Twitter account from Visionary Realms, which usually asks us some questions and gets some good community debate going. So the first question here is, what is your preferred art style in an MMORPG? And what is your favorite part about Pantheon's art? So it's an interesting topic, and we've actually talked a little bit about this, a tiny bit on the Rewind, and we've also talked about this on Pantheon.Plus, our first episode. But I thought it was still interesting to kind of get the takes of more people on this and kind of dig in a little bit on this, because I think it's very important when you look at like the style of your game or like what it looks like when you're showing your friends. So I thought it was important we talk about it.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Let's go ahead and highlight some of the Twitter responses here. The first one is from Kratuk. He says he's a big fan of fantasy and dark fantasy and a bit of gothic fantasy. Two games in the genre that come to mind for me is EverQuest and Diablo 2. There was something just charming about EQ's art, how EQ's art fit together, and Diablo 2 will always be better than Diablo 3 to me art-wise. I like Diablo 3 better, but
Diablo 2 is really good, man. Really good. I like that style too. That gothic sort of art. Oof, man, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Diablo 2 was great, but I thought Diablo 3 looked phenomenal. I don't know. JJ Paderia, Piedra says,
no.
I dislike. What's
reverting.
That?
I just said we're reverting. We had a streak going. Oh well.
I had it right, and then you messed it up and just threw me off. I don't know. I'm blaming you
Sorry
for
about
that. I just like bright, colorful, cartoonist-looking art. I feel that an MMO is designed to be serious, and it should look its part. It's fine if an MMO borrows from different cultures or creates its own, as long as the theme is believable and works in context of the game's lore.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about JJ's point there. Matching the lore with the art style is a really interesting like way of looking at it, because there's a lot of games that don't do that very well. You've got like really serious, dark lore, but it's like bright and cartoony. It totally throws me off too.
Of course you would bring up the lore comment, right? Of course.
Got it.
Nifu Fei says a consistent art style, as long as everything in the world adheres to one style and doesn't clash. That's really important. And I think that also plays into the whole getting rid of old assets and like redoing gray box zones and stuff like that so that the whole world looks like one world.
That's right. Great point.
I think it's a really, really good point. I think consistency is very important. Nathan Napalm says Vanguard had a beautiful art style, realistic D&D fantasy, but not too realistic, or it'll get lost in time. There's a time limit, but it can be done. Or there's a limit, but it can be done. Blafer says, doesn't need to be realistic. In my opinion, if the game is too realistic, it limits the possibilities in what you can add. The art of Pantheon looks to me like a mixture between D&D and Lord of the Rings, and that's perfect. I like that one a lot too.
Yeah, I like that mixture of D&D and Lord of the Rings. I can get behind that.
Yeah. Toadman Bear says, dual purpose. The environment should be more fantasy art and alive, popping with blasts of color, whereas character visuals should be more realistic with a high focus on nuanced details. Engravings on a long steel sword. In Pantheon, the art is what makes you want to chase and explore. So that's
interesting. Totally like separating out the environment from the player characters in terms of what the art style between those two. That's an interesting way of looking at it too.
It is interesting. Yeah. Basgrim chimed in and he said he likes believable fantasy. This is to say that pseudo-European medieval, but with a flair. Show me something I've never seen before, but make it grounded in something I can relate to, which I think Pantheon does very well. It's not over the top, but it's not super bland either. Scott says, I have no preference. If the game is good, I'll play in low poly at the same time as I would as if it were near realistic.
That's actually funny. I've heard a lot of people say that too, and it's not where I'm at all. Like, it's totally different from how I view it. But it's interesting because some people do really strongly feel like if it looked like Minecraft, they'd be okay with that, And I know that's not the majority, but I think there's definitely some people that fall in line with that.
Yeah, without a doubt. Grizzly says high resolution is highly valued, and for Pantheon, the richness and details and the view distance is awesome. Yeah, that's one thing that I remember in early videos. Someone said, I think it was Ko, when he was looking at the view distance for like Black Rose Keep, he's like, I can see that enemy all the way down.
That's right. Yeah, looking off those ramparts at the top of Black Rose Keep.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing, like with the view distance being a big piece of that. Verano says, I have no real preference when it comes to art style. I lean more towards realism, but it isn't really important to me as long as I enjoy the story and gameplay. Ashmaker says, I prefer darker, almost downtrodden when it comes to art style. I lean a bit towards realism, but it isn't important to me as long as I enjoy the story and the gameplay.
Yeah, almost that depressing kind of art style. It's like you're looking at it, you feel like you're in a dark mood just looking at it. Kind of interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes some of the best zones I've seen in MMORPGs were like bright and full of wonder, and it just like catches your eye, and you're like, wow, look at this. Like I'll relate. We've both played Hades, right? Like Hades is pretty dark for the most part. It's very, very bright in colors and art, but the game's dark. But then when you get to that end part where you walk over and you see the sun and it's bright and beautiful, I mean, that's an impactful moment, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And I think when you have a very dark game, that further makes those moments of beauty like impactful, right? Because of that huge variance in the dark depressing to this hope and wonder, which is pretty interesting. You can do that with graphics and style of environment, right?
That's exactly right. I love that too. And Jan Gerhardt actually talked about the contrasts, right? How he likes to use contrasts to make a point, to bring something, to give it definition. I think that's what you're talking about. And I agree 100%. I actually have that sunrise picture from the end of Hades. Spoiler alert if anybody's not gotten there yet, but I've got that as my desktop background because I enjoy it so much. And I think you're right. It sets a nice contrast to the rest of the game.
That's awesome. Ashmaker jumped on board with the Diablo 2 art style and says he prefers the almost downtrodden Diablo 2 style. Exorcist says, I don't know specific style names, but I do enjoy the Pantheon style. I like the cartoony style of WildStar. Pantheon is almost exactly what I picture when I think of Dungeons and Dragons. I think the art style of Luron Studios works fantastic for fantasy. So a few different things there. He goes everywhere from WildStar, which is probably the most cartoony MMO ever made, all the way up to Luron Studios, which is much more of a realistic D&D style. So
yeah, their style is very interesting. It's very unique to the Divinity games, and with Baldur's Gate 3 being, their latest piece, it's even more different, and it's a different take on the D&D style.
Yeah. And then finally we have DZ, and they says there's a combination between realism and stylized that they should work towards. It'll help with staying power. WoW overdoes it sometimes, but I think the effects like smoke, glowing, etc. is nice. Big two-handers are badass, but not so big that they look silly. So...
Is that like a Final Fantasy call out there?
Well, probably WoW as well. WoW really overdoes size. And he was kind of talking about that. So my take on this, and again, we've certainly had our conversations about this topic in the past. It was a topic, as I said, it was our very first Pantheon.Plus show, which feels like ages ago. It's interesting to see all the different viewpoints here across the thread. And even though we didn't include a lot of it, there's a very high commonality of people attacking World of Warcraft's graphic style. Like it's just funny to me because people that don't even play WoW have so much hate reserved in their soul for that game that anytime something's brought up, don't do it like WoW.
Well, I was surprised that the last comment was the only one that referenced WoW up to that point. But then I thought, you must have you were going through these with the eye of not making every comment about WoW, right?
I was trying.
Yeah, a lot of people usually bring that up.
Yeah, and I mean, people said cartoony and stuff. You get it. I'm not going to beat it to death with the same answer to the question over and over. I don't think that makes for very good podcast listening. So,
yeah.
So I'll say this about graphics and style. If a game tries to be too realistic, and Nathan kind of hinted on this, it kind of puts itself in the danger of looking bad as technology and graphics increase, because this happens and games are always going to continue to look more real. So when you have a stylized graphic presentation, the game can evolve for a longer period of time without looking more dated, as much as a game that tries to look, real. And just on the World of Warcraft piece, like when people attack it, the animation, sound effect, and environments are beautiful in that game. And they've held up for so long to allow players to experience it for 15 years, without graphics really ever getting in the way. But yet it still enhances their gameplay. So make no mistake on that, though. I don't want Pantheon to look like WoW in any way, shape, or form. Unless, of course, they can nail the amazing animations. I'd be all about having a crisp and clean animation combat style like WoW does. I mean, in its own graphical art, of course. Right. But if you look at any early footage of Pantheon when it was using a lot of assets, I thought that they were kind of close to trying to be too real at first. And it showed that there was like a stiffness in the actions of the player characters, actually. However, when looking at things like Fairthale and the newer character models, I think they've found a way to be realistic yet more stylized. And I think a lot of this comes from the coloring style that we see again across Fairthale. But however, the one thing that I did want to talk on here is that, armor doesn't need to be massively huge to look good, but something to think about. When the armor is bigger, it has the advantage to give developers being able to add more detail, especially for smaller races. So it's just one of those things, like, understand that not everything is negative. There is some positives even to the negative. That said, I'm very happy with the current art style that Pantheon has. And I think that it's a perfect blend of a little bit of realism and a little bit of stylized art. So Theric, where do you stand on this topic?
Those are good comments. I think your thing about the big armor on the small races is really interesting and funny. I definitely want to see big armor on small races. I think that will look absolutely hilarious. See a gnome running around in some sort of giant billowy armor cape or cloth or whatever they're wearing. But and it does give more room for artistic additions, I guess you would say, a bigger palette. So overall, it's kind of hard to define what kind of art style I like. It's almost one of those, for me, it's like, I know it when I see it, things. I don't really like the cartoon or the simple art style very much. But then I play a game like Breath of the Wild, or more recently, like I'm playing Dragon Quest XI on the Switch right now. And it just reminds me that it's not a good idea to generalize, because those games look great. And they both have more cartoonish styles. Breath of the Wild is very unique in terms of its like the hand-drawn sort of style. But Dragon Quest XI is definitely cartoony and silly. And I still think it looks really good. And then if you flip it over on the other side of the coin, you talk about something like Elder Scrolls Online, which is normally that's the type of art style I would say I do enjoy. But then I go and play that and something doesn't look right. There's something about it that doesn't work for me. And I don't know what it is, but I know that it's, again, not to generalize, to say this is the kind of style I like, because it's unique to each game. Nathan made a good point, and I agree with what he said about Vanguard's art style. That was in my notes here as too. I think that might be my favorite style in terms of MMOs that has ever come out. It was a good medium balance between realism and still keeping it, video game-esque looking. It didn't try too hard. So it's a good balance. And one of my favorite artists in real life is Larry Elmore. He did a lot of the work for Wizards of the Coast back in the day. He did a lot of the Forgotten Realms and the Dragonlance artwork. I love that style. That's my style of just general artwork, I would say. And I think Vanguard had a little bit of those tones in it. So I think that's why I like it. In terms of Pantheon's art, my favorite piece of art, I think we have to reference those screenshots from Fairthale, or not screenshots, but the gameplay of Fairthale that we've seen as a reference, because it's probably the best way to demonstrate how consistent of an art style there is that they're working on. And I think the sense of details that we see in those gameplay sessions of Fairthale, the foliage, the shadows, the surfaces, it's almost all woven into the scene. It's like a matching thread into a canvas. And I really love how it all sort of comes together. So what Nemofe said, like you were reading, consistency. It'd be really hard to be in a game, to like a game or be excited about a game if I didn't enjoy the art style. And I think that's one of those factors that prevents me from getting into some of the other more, like some of the Eastern style MMOs. But yeah, so looking at, when I see Pantheon and I seen the art style they've chosen, I'm really glad. And what you said about the assets, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit here, but I agree about those assets. They did look really good, I think, initially. And I'm glad to see that, in some of the more recent footage they've shown, like some of the old assets are still there with the new stuff, the new unique stuff they've created, because I think there was a lot of good looking art style from the previous, the older gameplay streams. So anyway, long answer. That's my thought on that.
Yeah, it's interesting too, like how you brought up the different games that you like, stepping outside of MMORPGs, stepping outside of Pantheon in general. I've always felt like, when video games try to be super realistic, that it loses like the core of why we played video games in the first place. Like the beautiful fantasy, cartoony, like vivid colors, the things that aren't in reality. Like we play video games to get out of reality.
Yeah.
Good.
No, I was just gonna say like reality is beautiful. Like there are some, like in the world, there are some beautiful places, but you can do things in a video game that you can't do in reality. There you can create scenes you can't create in reality. Why would we limit ourselves to what we actually can see in terms of what we can create, right?
That's a great way of putting it. Why would we limit ourselves with reality when we're trying to be in a world that's not the one we're into, especially this day and age, right? And again, I'm not necessarily saying that for Pantheon in general, but just gaming in general. I think that, seeing something amazing doesn't need to be realistic. So
there you go. Exactly.
All right. Next question is in one word. And by the way, we pretty much should have just thrown that out because almost none of these are one word. So let's just say it says, tell us your thoughts on need or greed for group loot. So Nafel chimed in and got some responses here. He says he thinks people are trained to expect it. And it isn't a bad system as long as everyone agrees on what need means. And that is the line in the game's definition. But like any loot system, it depends on communication and cooperation among the group. He said, oh, by the way, one word, expected. Dracattack says, I prefer to discuss loot rather than roll on loot and check boxes. But to do that, you have to be grouped with friends. Pizzazz says it can be abused, though, and therein lies the issues. As a consumer, I'd feel ripped off if someone is rolling need on things they clearly don't and other group members do. So herein lies the question, or a possible answer, in my opinion, if you're using a need for greed system. So Deuterino says trust. Streak says preferred, as well as the wall. He says prefer as well. So so there's people who actually want the systems in place. That's what it's surprised. You surprised by that?
I'm just surprised that they stuck to one word. Nobody ever stuck to one word.
Nobody ever sticks. I used to put dashes in between. Outdated. Breakout says, he says, I think it's a great system used in small dungeon groups. However, I think someone needs to improve it in a way that makes it where it's weighted to somebody that needs the item as an upgrade first. Then if no one needs it, then it evens out to everybody. Jorgen Wickstrom says, quick, no matter what system you have in place, there will be people who abuse it. Need agreed, round robin, free for all, master leader, all tried and tested. Give us options to choose and we'll pick one that's suited, what's suited for our particular group. I really like that. I think that that's a great point. We've talked often on this show about not reinventing the wheel when certain things work. If you have all those options, you're in a good place, in my opinion. So, A Pity says integrity. Nicole says fair-ish. Brimstone Gaming says, I really love it, and I think it should be implemented in Pantheon, but please make it more user-friendly than EverQuest's need for greed. That EverQuest, I never saw that because I quit before they put that into the real game. When I went back to live, I was like, what is this? Like, it was awful. The loot window. I know.
I had the same reaction. I remember when we played it a little while ago and had the same reaction. I was like, this seems weird. It doesn't work.
I don't know if I've ever seen any more complicated way to give out loot than that. So
yeah.
All right. Mad Dingo says, I like having multiple options for character or for group loot. Need, greed, master loot, random rolls. Let the groups have their own options on what they decide. So kind of similar to what was said by Jorgen Wickstrom. And finally here, Kevin, he says, need never works because people will roll even when they're actually greed. And it just leads to hard feelings. As a weekly pickup raid leader in Star Wars, The Old Republic, I just did greed all to avoid hard feelings. You have to class restrict roles for need to work. So an interesting point there from Kevin. I don't agree that need never works. I've seen it work, so that I don't agree with, but pretty harsh stance on it. So My basic thoughts on this, I think this is just one of those things that people overthink a lot. If you have options of need versus greed or doing loot master, then everyone's happy. I personally think need versus greed is fine, but of course I can admit that there are times when certain classes have an advantage over others because they have an ability to roll need more often than not. I do think that needing an item should be refined by VR if they were to add it, but it's not always as easy as it sounds. Typically, these issues really only come up with a big negative or a major focus, and it's usually around pugging. Because typically guild runs are going to predefine on loot in one way or another, and people will know what to expect. One thing I cannot get behind is taking something that drops just to sell it over someone who would use it. This is the one downside of being able to resell items in Pantheon, where people value the wealth of the item that it could generate over the need for use of a character to improve. At the end of the day, there just really isn't a perfect system, so options are nice. Typically, my advice is this, though. Know the loot rules before you join a group. If there's an item you're after, make it known and discuss it before it drops. This may tell you if the group is really the group for you or not. Don't let yourself get into a situation where you're surprised by not getting something that you thought you deserved the most without knowing the group's goals. I think if you do that, you really can eliminate a lot of problems. And again, stop saying that need doesn't work just because you're in bad pugs. Like, I've been in great groups where need does work and people say, hey, do you need that? I'll just roll greed. The one thing that sometimes drives me crazy, and the MMORPG genre seems to really be heavy on this, is they allow negative experiences to totally define everything about different topics. Whereas, there's a lot of good ones that are ignored. So I don't know. I think situation in loot distribution is very important, not just the system in place. So Theric, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. What you said there is really important. Design around the positive experience rather than the negative experience, right? Look at what makes the best things happen and go with that instead of trying to dodge every problem, because you're never going to do that. You're never going to dodge every loot issue, every loot problem. That's what it's about. It's going to happen. People are going to disagree. There's going to be upset, but you don't want to throw out everything just to try and get away from that problem. Flexibility is important. I think this is one of those things where if they can design a system that is just generally accepted, we actually need to integrate into our sort of how we play MMOs, that when you join a group, it should be one of those things like, okay, we're looking for a tank. This is what we're looking for. Also, this is the type of group we're running. It's a need before greed, or it's a master looter, right? That should be part of the advertisement for the group when you're trying to get people together to do something, because that way, at least it's upfront and people know. And if the game is designed with a flexible system with multiple options, or with nothing, people know what's going in, and then you as the group leader, let's say there's no need before greed system in place. It's just left to free for all, right? The group leader then it's on them to say, this is the type of group we're running. We're going to roll. It's free for all. Everybody can roll on everything, whether you need it or not. Or the group leader says, no, we have this system in place. If you don't abide by it, you get one shot, you're out, that type of thing. Right? So communicate both from the group leader, and if you're looking for a group and you join a group, and know what you're getting into. So we've talked about it before. We've brought up some more sort of different angles on this thing, but again, it comes down to communication in my mind.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, with that said, let's go ahead and move on. That's it for VR news and notes.
When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into social media and see what the discussion is all about.
Okay, so this week I've got a really interesting topic, and it comes from the forums at Pantheon.Plus, and it's called Variable Cosmetic Quality. The poster, Zin, he asked the community what they thought about the idea of items in Pantheon having the potential for small variations in their appearance when they drop. Now, it's important to state, not their stats. We're not talking about variable statistical, positives, 1 point here, 1 point there, or different functions. It's a really important distinction. We're just talking about appearance here when it comes to the items dropping, because variable stats changes the whole conversation. So, he's talking about enhancements to a piece of gear or maybe a weapon. And I'm just going to read what he wrote because he puts it in a really good way. So Zin says, for fans of collectible card games, this would be similar to foil cards. So the item has the exact same stats and function as its base version, but on rare instances has an improved appearance, particle effects, maybe shinier reflective, or maybe exaggerated colors. This unique cosmetic appearance could create a multi-tier economy. the base version of the item is typically much cheaper or more accessible for everybody, while the premium or the foil versions are more exclusive and expensive. Devoted players could spend considerable time and money towards replacing their favored gear with premium versions. If you're lucky enough to stumble onto an extremely rare, valuable premium version of a drop, you have the choice to either trade down to a base version, getting, a lot of cash in the process, or you have the choice to keep it, equip it, and, I like the way he puts it. He says, look like the baller you really are inside. So I know, before we get into the comments from the community, I want to just put a little disclaimer. We're not talking about, the transmog sort of argument is coming right to mind, I'm sure, for a lot of people. We need to sort of take that out of our brains, because that's not really what we're talking about here, because you don't control the look of the item. This is just the RNG gods sort of determining how an item might appear with special bells and whistles. And again, we got to prevent the whole pink bunny suit agenda, because it's not changing the fundamental appearance of the item, as Zin said, just giving it an effect, like maybe a particle effect or a reflective appearance or different coloring, things like that. So with that out of the way, let's dive into what people said on the forums about this. Counterfletch, commenter, said, I like the idea of premium aesthetics, partly for the reasons stated, though mostly because it allows for aesthetic diversity, more personalization, which is hugely important. I think variant looks don't need to be different rarities or qualities. Just having different visuals like color to allow for those of us who really value personalization to get more deeply invested into our characters allows us to express our creativity. Naos said he had the different approach. He said, as for the foil idea, I'm not a fan. He says, leave that to the Asian or the Eastern styled MMOs. I would let the look of items have their looks and leave it at that. I would seek a specific weapon for a specific look, but not the same weapon over and over until I get a specific version of that weapon, which is what's being presented here as like the foil item idea. Ixar said, not big on either of these. Random stats should stay. He's talking about the stats. And again, that's not really what it was about, but he says it should stay in the ARPG looter shooter type of games. And foil items tends to muck up identities of items. Our Pantheon.Plus comrade in arms, Nefel, said, honest question, all else being equal, how many of you would purposely seek out a weapon or an armor piece in order to get that unique look? Personally, I would, but I would wonder how others would feel about it.
I would totally. I love this topic. I'm excited to kind of get an idea at the end of this. It's interesting because, talking about like replayability and getting items, like, so first of all, if an item's rare and I want to get some kind of crazy dagger, right? But I can also get a version of the dagger where like toxin's dripping off of it, right? Like a special foil edition. Yes. Like I would sit and farm that item, like the same way I farmed the ancient Cyclops, right? Like trying to get those boots, where's Minus at? Oh, he's in that dungeon again, trying to get that dagger. But like, it just, it provides like one piece or part of content. It provides the ability to just have a reason to keep going after something. And I love that.
I know. You know what, honestly, as I was writing the notes for my comments here on this piece, I was getting more and more excited as I was writing it. I was realizing what a great idea this is. We'll get to that in a second, but I totally am on board. And I'm surprised. I thought you might take a different approach. I thought you might be on the other side of the fence with this, but we'll follow up on that in a second. But we're on the same track, I think. Disposalist actually replied to what Nefal said. He said, yeah, I did it all the time in games like Lord of the Rings Online. I would explore every location I could, check for new vendors for new looks. I'd make sure to check the look of the dropped gear, even if it didn't have stats I liked. But it was so popular because in Lord of the Rings Online, you could store that look in a wardrobe and use it to replace the look of worn gear. So that's getting a little into the transmog side of things, but it's a different sort of extension of this whole argument, I think.
I think they work well together too, to be honest, because then you have an even more rare look that you can use for a long time. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Beaver Biscuit said, so long as the foil items still look close enough to the originals that you can easily tell, they keep their looks within their station. So like no fiery level 1 tattered loincloths, please. I wouldn't mind it at all. Foil farming gives the big guys something to do as long as permacamping is somehow made impossible, so harassing casuals isn't an option. The big guys will need something to do, allowing players to turn off foil effects like they can turn off cosmetics as well as this compromise to make it work. So that's the toggle. No toggles. Yeah, the toggle trigger word there. The next comment is actually from a Goofy Warrior guy, and I like what he does a lot of times in these threads. He He's got reference material. So he cites comments from Joppa and Brad in a 2018 interview they did. They were asked if Pantheon would have RNG based items, and their response addressed it from a stats and function perspective rather than appearance. It was pretty definitive that an item's stats are its stats, and we're not going to be seeing like random taking away from stats or function of an item. But the question of appearance wasn't actually really addressed. And I actually left a link in the description if you want, with the timestamp, to where Joppa comments on this, if you want to watch it for yourself. But Goofy Warrior Guy interpreted it to sort of extend to appearances. And his comments were, it's VR's vision that items are going to be identifiable both by look and stats. So if you see a person with a specific item, you know exactly what that item is based on how it looks, and you'll know the stats are specific to that item. There won't be RNG stats, and there won't be RNG visuals on items. Although Joppa did talk about potentially enhancing a potential enhancing system in future expansions that would allow you to alter items. So I replied on the forums to this thread because I don't think their comments do rule out appearance changing variations. But again, it's just an opinion, a different take on it. But overall, like I said earlier, I'm surprised, Minus. I thought you were really going to take an opposing stance to this. I think some people won't like this. I know that there's a hardcore crowd that says an item's appearance is its appearance, just like what Goofy Warrior Guy said. But man, in a subscription-based MMO like Pantheon, this might be that secret weapon, right? Make it profitable without having to go to some of the monetization schemes we've seen in other games that everybody hates. And we've talked before about how getting creative with that monetization is really might be key for Pantheon. And when we associate cosmetics with cash shops, that's just because that's the way it's been done. It doesn't have to be that way. And you and I have agreed upon this before on that point. It's just the way it's been done in the past. This system would separate what drives people from utilizing cash shops, which is like identity and character customization, puts it into the game world where you have to spend who knows how long, maybe months, maybe years, trying to attain that perfect set. Like you said, you've got the dagger, but you want the one dripping with venom, right? Get that perfect set. That's going to pay the bills in a sub-based MMO. And like I said, as I was writing this, I was getting more and more excited because I realized that this has a lot of potential. Now, the question is, does this negate a transmog system? I said yes in my notes. Hearing us talk this through a little bit, I may take that back a little bit, because why would you grind for a foil item or a premium weapon look when you can just sort of create it yourself? And I'm not opposed to a transmog system like we've talked about, as long as you have to achieve the item in the world first to use that look. So like Disposalist talked about a wardrobe. But this might be a better option, and it actually accomplishes the same goal. It takes the control of an item's appearance, again, small differences, out of the player's direct control, puts it more to indirect control through time spent trying to achieve it. So yeah, you also can't change the appearances drastically as if you had a full-on transmog system, but I think this is one of those middle grounds. It's really reasonable and potentially valuable in terms of design. So, I think there's some really interesting ideas here. I love this topic. I'd go as far to say a system like this can really extend the lifespan of content. And like I said, trying to get that item you want might be the short-term goal, but then the long-term goal is to get it with the visual enhancement you really like. So exciting stuff. Are we on the same page, or are we far apart on this, Minus?
No, I love it. And the reference to Magic with the foil cards is a perfect explanation.
Yeah.
I played a lot of Magic, and it was really awesome to have foil land cards specifically, or, some of those dual lands that came out back in the day. If you could get those special, they were worth tons of money. It's a really well put together discussion. I really like it a lot. What I would argue is I don't think it takes anything away from, the transmog system, which you kind of hinted that even your opinion's changing on a little bit there. Because again, like to me, to have a perfect transmog system, you have to have the ability to earn first, right? Yeah. So if someone's transmogging, Minus's dagger of destruction, right? And you got that item and it was tough to get. And now you like to use the look of it because it's pretty cool. So you use it in the future. There's a big difference between I spent, 4 times as much time trying to get the Minus's dagger of poison destruction or destruction with the poison look, right? Both of those things add to playability, right? So And then, so here's the thing. So the reason I would argue transmog on this point is, so first of all, let's say the item's awesome, right? So I fight for it. I get the version with the dripping venom or whatever it is. And I'm using that. And it's like, wow, people are like, oh my God, look at what he has, right? So there's that side of it that everybody says, oh, well, it provides this identity. It's a further identity to the same item in that sense. But then let's think about it from a transmog perspective. What if they design one that, the game changes, a patch changes, how stats work a little bit, and there's this really awesome item that's super hard to get, super rare and unique, but nobody uses it because it's not really efficient or it's not really good anymore. Don't you still want to be able to show that off with transmog so I can go farm that item, right? Yeah. So this whole argument of items don't live on because of transmog is crazy, because the items do live on. Sure, you don't know what I have equipped unless you inspect me. But the argument of saying transmog hurts item identification is completely wrong, because the item you're showing has more life. And if these items you're showing are super rare things that you achieved that not many people did, then that mysticism of that item is going to live on even more. And the other part of it too is like, so I love the idea of a rarity of item look, not just the color of the item from, stats. Like I like that the stats will stay the same. I have no problem with that. But I love this ability to farm for a really rare look and feel of the item. And I think, again, as somebody said, it adds to more personalization, because everybody's so focused on items being, important and items having identity. To me, it's more important that my character has identity. And if the items also have identity and I'm able to take these items I've achieved around the world, these special moments that'll live on forever. Like, what if one of the greatest moments I ever have is getting that dripping poison dagger? And 3 years down the line, I'm able to equip it as a visual to show people like, wow, look at this item that maybe doesn't even drop anymore, right? Like, oh my God, look at that item he has. Now I have a whole discussion around how did you get that item? When did you get it? Or, hey, there's Minus with that crazy item again. I think that player and character personalization is more important than, not in replacement of, but is more important than the actual item itself that you're holding having value. Just because I'm not holding, that dagger doesn't mean the dagger I'm showing isn't important. There's a very big difference between item importance of what I'm holding versus what I'm showing, and what people are important or hyping is the show and look. Like, if I have that dagger, I want to know you have it. Okay, well, if I have that dagger, you now know I got it. And that's the same thing, really. So again, rant off, but I love this. I love this.
Those are great points. And I think it comes down to the key being here is that it's a minor visual enhancement. It's not a change, right? It's not like it doesn't change the Minus's dagger of destruction from a dagger into some sort of like, giant axe, or it doesn't change. You can't do that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about dripping venom. We're talking about, having elf blood running down the sides of it, which I know, you would probably farm for days, years, who knows how long to try and get. And then, like you said, it extends that item's lifespan into the future, because again, it'll be replaced, it'll become somewhat, there will be something better down the road. Of course, that's the way things go. But you can keep that look that you worked really hard to attain. So,
yeah, and I got really into the transmog side, and I know people probably saw that coming. Like, stepping away from the transmog side, I love this idea on its own too. Like, I think it's a phenomenal idea on its own. It doesn't have to relate to transmog. Yeah, I just kind of got into transmog because we were talking about, would the two systems work together, and I think they would. But
there's a natural connection there. I mean, it's easy to go there, but even if, like you said, even just this system on its own is adds the potential for a crazy amount of player engagement and people putting in the time and making it their focus to achieve that one particle effect, right? I want my bow to leave a trail of leaves on the ground. I want my bow to fire something, but it still looks like the same bow. Everybody knows I've got the bow of whatever. It just has a little flourish to it. So yeah, great stuff. Anything else on this?
No, I'm good.
Okay, cool. Okay, so introductions for the week. We had Oltanner stopped by. And so he's from Portugal. He says, "Greetings, everyone. Portuguese here, hoping to get to know y'all. I was always a big fan of RPGs, be it table or virtual. To be honest, never played many MMOs. At the time I started playing video games, WoW wasn't new anymore, and unfortunately EQ had already gone sort of underground. He says he played the older versions of WoW for a few years, but left it around the time of Cataclysm, came back, tried a few more, but none of them really caught his attention. He heard about Pantheon about a year ago, and the more he learned, the more he liked it. So it just ticked many of the right boxes, which is something we say all the time. He's really excited for release and definitely looking forward to playing with everyone. So welcome to the community, Old Tanner. Great to have you.
Welcome.
And in terms of fan projects, man, it was a good week for fan fiction. It actually was good 2 weeks for fan fiction because we had one from last week, but we didn't have time for it to mention it. Crowsinger, who is a fantastic writer and active over on Thorndeep's Discord of the Tavern, the Terminus Tavern. They penned a story called Orphan Druid, and there are 4 or 5, I think 5 parts to it. And it is a great read. It's easy to read. It's not like this massive opus or anything like that. And I don't want to give anything away, but let's just say like the author's name gives you a bit of idea of sort of maybe what to expect. So awesome work to Crowsinger, and I'm really looking forward to your next piece. So keep up the good work. I also want to mention our friend Tech Ninja. And I didn't even have this in my notes because it was just breaking sort of fan fiction news from yesterday, I think, or the day before. Finished the next piece in the Faith and Family series that he is working on, and I've read the story so far. I haven't checked out the new piece yet. I haven't had time, but I'm going to do that right away. And Tech Ninja was on Thorndeep's Terminus Tavern show this week, I guess. And so if you haven't seen the VOD for that, go to Thorndeep's Twitch channel and you can check out, hear Tech Ninja talk about his creative process. And he goes really deep into sort of the story of how he became a creative writer, which is really interesting and sort of relatable. I can get behind what he was saying, and I really enjoyed hearing him. So, and I enjoyed reading his work. I can't wait to read the next piece in Faith and Family. So I would encourage everybody to go over there and check out the fan fiction forums. But outside of that, that's it for this week's community discussions.
Let's talk content creator updates and new additions to Pantheon.Plus.
All right, so let's jump into what's going on our website, Pantheon.Plus. So it's been a couple of weeks since we talked about the additions to the site from the community content creators, so let's do a little catch up. Nathan Napalm was at it strong for the last 2 weeks with a great interview featuring Pantheon's own Ben Dean. Nathan asks him some tough questions from his community and gets a great deal of new information and clarity from Ben. If you haven't listened, I highly recommend doing so. To add to that, he actually recently just put out a condensed version of the interview, which covers the biggest topics in a nice and neat 15-minute package. Don't miss this for a couple reasons. One, this was Nathan's first interview, long overdue in my opinion, but it was one of the best developer interviews we've had yet. Ben Dean really felt, like he was comfortable. Both of them were kind of joking back and forth. It was just a really good vibe.
Exactly.
And to add to that, like he was so overcome with joy and excitement that in Nathan fashion, he produced another chart-topping hit song about streaming Pantheon, which you can also find on Pantheon.Plus or on his official YouTube. So
there's such a great interview. There was like 2 friends, man, talking about a game that they're excited about. Like there was I love how he's so informal. He's got a gift for informal, casual style, but doesn't feel like unprepared or unprofessional. It's just he's got such a great style to his interviewing and his overall videos. I really enjoyed Nathan's stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Basgrim just released a video as well detailing his thoughts on the newsletter from October 22nd, and he goes over it in pretty heavy detail to really dig into the important details and give his thoughts using his years of Pantheon experience to really find meaning behind some of the key facts that are presented. So if you want to get more into the newsletter, I know a lot of people have covered it. There's more detail there from a little bit of a different perspective. So good stuff there. So we've also been pretty busy here at Pantheon.Plus, and it's nice because we've kind of slowed down a little bit after all the class videos. But all the crew here has had content releases in the last 2 weeks. So first, Drac continued his Community Plus profiles by completing one for both of the content creators mentioned previously, Basgrim and Nathan, as well as community member Shortalk. Theric just dropped another session of lore analyzation in his ongoing series, Theric's Perception of Pantheon, and this time digging into some of the discovered texts, books, and scrolls within the Pantheon lore in a video called Pages of Pantheon. And by the way, Theric, I love the editing in that video. I love actually having the book. Like, I think I messaged you right away when I started watching, like, dude, the editing in this is cool. So
yeah, that was fun because I had this idea for how I wanted it to look. I was like, I need to have a book with pages turning. The animation has to be of a page turning. It took me a while to actually figure out how to do that. And I finally had that aha moment where I was like, oh my God, okay, this has to work. And it did. Whew, it was awesome. I was so excited. So I hope you guys like that one.
Dude, isn't it funny to kind of look at some of like the original stuff we created when we were creating content and like look at what it's evolving to? Like there's these little nuances and like these, I'm going to try that. And like the more confident you get in making content creation, like, well, I wanted this to happen. I'm going to make it work, you know? So
yeah.
I love it.
I know, me too. I've really discovered that as in creating content. It's fun to improve and change your abilities and get new tools in the tool belt.
And there's this time period where at first you're like, how am I going to do this? And then once you start doing more, you're like, this is what I want. And I'm going to figure out how to do it. Like there's
addictive.
Yeah. And finally, I put out a video entitled Discovering Pantheon in late 2020, which was created to help new discoverers of Pantheon understand what the game is all about and its current state. I cover the most well-known members of the VR team and discuss the story and world briefly, and then highlight some of the key systems that'll make Pantheon a unique experience. While some of us have been heavily attached to the news and details of Pantheon, we may not benefit as much as others from this video, but I do hope it can be something that we can show our friends to help them urge them to become part of this awesome community. So
yeah, you did a great job of bringing people in. Like we talked about last week on the Rewind, this is the time to show off Pantheon for what it is and get people excited about it and get eyeballs on it, so to speak. And your video does a great job of just putting the major points forward and bringing them to the forefront so people can see, okay, this is what it's about. This is the kind of game it is. So it's hard to do that, especially when you're deep in the weeds as we are, to remember what the fundamentals are, but you did a good job of that.
Awesome. Thanks, man. So what's being worked on? Well, go figure. If you followed this podcast, articles. But here's the good news. As we stated, the articles would be out by the end of this month. It will definitely be happening. Articles are on pace by the end of the month to be released in full. We'll immediately feature some previous topics from Pantheon crafters, and we'll have a few new articles that'll be ready to go with the launch. Right now, from what I know, we're just finalizing the import on those old articles, finalizing testing, and getting ready to launch. Pretty much everything's in and working. I also spent a lot of time. This was a miserable experience there. I spent a lot of time doing a full update on our spell database. So those of you that don't know, when you look at our spell page, we actually are already starting a database to try to keep as much of the spell data organized as humanly possible, so that when the game comes out, you'll be able to use it to create guides or create your own articles by actually linking these abilities and doing this cool stuff that we're trying to build from the ground up. So I completely redid our spell database from the old webpage to the new. But one of the cool things I did was actually kept all the old spells that aren't on the new site. I put them as unconfirmed. So as you look at the different classes, once this update goes through, you'll actually be able to like look at old spells in versus what's confirmed in the game so far. So it's kind of a way to, as those are announced, be able to throw them in, or to kind of look back at the history of old unconfirmed spells, which is kind of neat. But at the same time, we're actually redoing that entire class page. It's probably going to be next after articles. So we're going to implement a forum system as well as a full class page update, which we have designed. We just have to literally plug and play it. So a lot of stuff coming, but I'm really excited to get articles out. And again, anybody listening, you're going to be able to create an article, create an account. Once it goes live, you can create an article, and then if it's approved, it'll be posted. So looking forward to that. Very much so.
Yeah, nice job grinding through that. I know that can be a slog.
Yeah. And finally, other news from us. I just want to give a huge shout out to Nemufe, who's a member of the community. He's extremely talented when it comes to art. I worked with him for a commission, and I can't be more pleased with some of the new art that we have now for our channel, and all these character art for our front-facing members of the Pantheon.Plus team. So super great job to Nemufe. I'm loving this stuff, and hopefully we'll do some neat stuff with this art in the future, and hopefully maybe even more. So Nemufe, thank you very much.
As soon as you sent me the new artwork and we all had our little personal like icons made, I updated all my social media. Everything where there's a picture that represents me is now Nemufe's art, and that you commissioned that because I love it so much. It is fantastic. Good job, Nemufe.
Yeah, it's really good. And thank you. And that's it from what's going on here at our website, Pantheon.Plus. Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it gets here, I just yell, mail!
We're getting sued.
Okay, mailbox time. We have 4 questions this week, and the first one comes from Lucille. I have to say, before I get to the question, Lucille was very excited about this question. They put it on Discord. Even the week before, and they were like, "Oh, I have a question for next week," and I made sure to highlight it, and it's going to be the first one. And it's kind of an interesting one that I hadn't really thought about before. The question is, what do you think about the XPable level range? So should it be the mobs level times 3 plus 1 in terms of, and they're talking about what range you still get experience from a mob, if you're higher or than them, because there are considerations to take. So they ask should it be a wider, but with a bigger drop off at higher levels? Or should it be a smaller range? So you only get experience if you're 1 level above a mob. And I had to think about this one because it's kind of interesting. And you need to keep it pretty tight, I think, most of the time to prevent a lot of the higher levels coming back. You don't want, higher levels coming back and just mass farming lower zones for XP because the range is too big. They're still getting experience 10 levels above a mob. You don't want that. On the other hand, though, I think it's important that you want to try and encourage people because we've talked about this before in Pantheon in terms of soloing what you can and what you can't do. I can't solo something that's a level above me or even that same level as me, but I want to be able to come back 5 levels from now and solo that mob, even if it's just for a moderate reward, like XP reward in terms. I think I would still want that to be there. So I do think it's I don't know what the number is, a calculation. I really have no idea, but you do have to have some range of XPable mobs when you exceed their level a little bit. It's a tough question. What do you think on this one, Minus?
Yeah, I just think, it's more so as you're leveling, you need more experience to level, right? So I think that a wide range is okay, but it can't be. So think about if a mob is 10 levels lower than you, right? Yeah. You shouldn't be able to go to an area where there's 100 of them and just mow them all down for the experience, right? That can't be beneficial to you to do. So you can get experience from them, but it should be smaller. At the same time, I don't think mobs are going to be that compact on each other anyway to make it where that's going to be an efficient way to level, getting 2, 3, 4, 5 experience when, mobs your level in a group are giving you 1,000,
Yeah.
So I think that I kind of like this idea of every mob giving experience, but, making it so that it really downgrades to, a few experience here or there. I mean, if you're still taking a faction hit, why wouldn't you get experience, right?
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, I guess it's just a question of make it super inefficient, make it just like soloing, right? Make it super inefficient, but still make it a thing. So
yeah, I think that there should be probably it's difficult because as you level up, if you're saying, okay, within 5 levels, you'll get experience. So if you're level 10, you could kill a level 5. And that's well, that's really easy, right? But if you're level 50, killing a 45 may not be that easy. So it's hard to say it's hard to say a set level. But there should definitely be, something where the mobs themselves carry an experience value. And then it's sort of modified by your difference in level. And then go from there. I don't know. I'm maybe I'm getting too deep in it.
No, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about it that way. You remember in EverQuest, even when you were level 50 in EverQuest, there were level 40 mobs that you couldn't solo them. And even if you had a group, maybe 40 is maybe 42, 43. There were some tough mobs that you still couldn't really do much with. Still posed a challenge. So you're right. The range, is going to be variable as you go from low level to high level, right? In terms of what range of monsters still should give you experience, because the challenge is variable from that, from one point to the next. So it's an interesting question. I'm glad that Lucille asked that one. Let's move on. The next one is from Tech Ninja, and he asked crafting question. How regional should crafting materials be? So specific ores and herbs, should they be linked to geographic elements or exclusive to certain continents? Would a wolf in King's Reach provide the same skinning material as a wolf in Rainfall or Whitethaw? What do we think? I'll let you hit this one first.
100%. I think crafting materials should be regional. I mean, it makes perfect sense for ores and herbs. why would the same herb grow in the halfling area that would grow in the scar area, right? So that aspect of it, I think, is important. And yeah, if a wolf in King's Reach looks different and is grown differently, they should have different materials. I think that's there's a lot of MMOs that already do that, to be honest. I mean, even I think WoW did that, right? So I think that it should be. I don't think you should ever be able as a crafter to stay in one area and get all the things you need. I think that a crafter should have to explore and advance their, knowledge of the world just as much as someone who's adventuring for combat, right? So yeah. I would say I don't know that there's many MMORPGs that don't do that, and I think that they should really definitely have regional and rare regional items and enemies and wolves in different areas giving different things. So for sure.
That's a good answer. I had a similar thought, but take it from a little bit of a different perspective. And I think there is a lot of value in doing something like this. When you itemize mobs differently based on the region, it gives new players a good incentive to go out and kill some low level stuff. In addition, as an added bonus to their like early leveling process. So, and I know Nefel will love. I don't know if he'll love it, but he'll be interested in this sort of idea, because the idea that I had was, imagine if there was like a crafting recipe that called for bat wings. But more specifically, let's just say it didn't say bat wings, it said wings from Wild's End, right? So something like that. In fact, keeping it vague, you could really get people hunting for things they need. And a lot of players might be in possession of like a needed material and not even know it. So like a new player, like a new halfling in Wild's End is out killing whatever, bats or other flying creatures. And they might see, Wild's End batwing when they go to loot the corpse, instead of just a regular batwing, which could be like, something you might see in another place. And then that's a crafting material, with the internal sort of flagging system that they've talked about with regard to the perception system. I think it's interesting if you extend that and make it even more vague, like, is this the material that's needed for that recipe that calls for wings from Wild's End, or is it something else, right? Leave some mystery around it for players to figure out when it comes to like regional materials. So I just my mind just sort of went off on a bit of a tangent when I was reading this question and thinking about it, adding some mystery to the world. So kind of a cool idea. It'd be interesting to see what the community had to say about something like that. Next one is from JJ. He says, with the game world being open, what do you think is a fair respawn time for bosses? And do you think there should be a fail timer giving people a certain amount of time to kill it with a reduced respawn time? So I'll go first here and just say this is obviously a big question. It's one that's going to have a huge impact on Pantheon's, on the world, right? And I'm sure VR has been like melting their brains trying to get this piece figured out, going through all kinds of different permutations on it. And of all the conversations I've seen, I think the best option that I've come across is that there has to be a lengthy minimum respawn time. But then after you hit that minimum, then you randomize it from there. So like, let's say, for example, you have a named wolf, right? Comes out at least 15 minutes, it's minimum 15 minutes respawn, but it could actually go longer than that. It could be 30 minutes. It could be an hour. I think it's important that it is randomized so you get, you don't get too static with it. As to the fail timer, I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to let you tackle that one a little bit if you have a thought on that, because I'm not sure exactly how that would work. But I think there is something. I think there is something there. I just don't know what it is. But what do you think on this one from JJ?
I don't know. I think that boss mobs should have a placeholder mob, I think.
Sure.
So if you set, let's say, 30 minutes for a boss to spawn, for example, you still have the RNG that boss may not spawn. So then it becomes an hour wait, and it may not spawn again. Then it becomes an hour and a half wait. So I don't think that it has to be a variable respawn time if there's going to be a placeholder mob, because that would just be infuriating. I think at least having some bit of knowledge of saying, okay, well, we have 3 hours to camp this guy tonight, which means that we're going to have 6 attempts at him spawning. And of those 6 attempts of him spawning, we have X amount of chance of him dropping the loot we want. I think there's enough random there to not have to randomize the time and still make it worthwhile. Sure. As far as the, a fail timer, like where basically the way I read that is like, well, it'll despawn. Like, so the boss won't just sit there. I don't know that there's a lot of value in that personally. I understand the perspective. But But if it's not killed and it's sitting there, I think whoever discovers it should have that awesome moment of like, oh my God, I found a boss. It's up.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good answer. I like that too. Okay, last one, finishing up with John Wayne. And he always asks 3 questions, so I picked one. He said, other than your main class, so for me, Ranger, for you, Rogue, which class are you excited to test out and or see in action during the pre-alpha or alpha testing phases? Let you hit this one first.
I'm excited. I want to try Warrior. I definitely want to try out Warrior. I think that's the tank class I'm most excited for. I would like to try out Cleric as well. Probably it's the healer I'm most excited for. As far as DPS goes, I don't know. Like if Bard makes it in, obviously I'm excited to try that. But I'm really, really high on the Rogue. I would say that, probably Warrior and Cleric will get some love from me checking them out. But right now, like Rogue is really holding a high spot for me.
Yeah. I'm gonna say the Enchanter for me. I really want to see how they do the Enchanter, being the only real control class there. Whatever that means now in terms of definition. But it's a very unique class, and I want to see how they're managing it. So I hope that is on the horizon at some point. And outside of that, I don't know. I'm excited to see everything, but yeah, my Ranger first, and then my see the Enchanter, because I've talked about my alts, and I think my first alt will definitely be an Enchanter. So excited to see that. And that wraps up the mailbag for this week.
Well, awesome, everybody. Thank you for another fun episode of The Rewind. I'm sorry that my voice is a little shoddy, that there's a little bit of, I'm sure you hear me fighting off some coughs from time to time, and I'm going to have to be editing out quite a bit of coughing in the background. But I do always love doing this, so it is well worth fighting through, putting on the warrior face here. Theric, another great show. Thank you so much for all the time you put into this, and awesome content this week. Really love the pages of Pantheon. To everybody else, thank you for checking us out, whether it's live on YouTube when we premiere at noon on Sundays, or if it's on iTunes or Spotify with downloading our podcast or subscribing up. It's awesome. I never thought we'd be running a weekly podcast and having the fun success we're having with it for, the community that we're in. It's absolutely phenomenal. And we thank you guys for all the support. And until next time.
Cheers, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon.Plus Rewind. Be sure to follow Minus and all Pantheon.Plus related content on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube under the name Pantheon.Plus. Also, be sure to follow Theric at PantheonTheric on Twitter. Keep up to date on all Pantheon Rise of the Fallen information on www.Pantheon.Plus, the definitive source for all media of Pantheon. Until next time.